They mocked the blind alien girl hitting walls, until a human gave her his vision forever. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The galactic spaceport of Meridius Prime was a marvel of interstellar engineering, a crossroads where thousands of species met for trade and diplomacy. Among them moved a small Elysian girl named Taris, her slender blue form navigating the cavernous halls with uncertainty, her eyes clouded with a milky film. The Elysians were respected across the galaxy for their unmatched healing abilities and empathic gifts. Their homeworld orbited a binary star system, bathing its surface in perpetual twilight that had evolved their species to possess extraordinary vision capable of perceiving both light and the emotional energies of living beings. This site was central to their identity, culture, and healing arts. But Taris had been born different. Laughter echoed across the main concourse of the spaceport as she collided with yet another support column. The crystalline structure hummed with the impact, amplifying the sound of the collision across the vast chamber. Several Varikian merchants nearby clicked their mandibles in amusement. "Watch where you're going, blind one," called out a Varikian in the galactic common tongue, his translator giving the words a cruel edge. Taris felt her face flush with indigo embarrassment. She had heard this mockery 1,000 times before. On her homeworld, she was considered defective, a cruel irony for a species of healers to have produced a child they could not cure. Her parents had been kind but overprotective, rarely allowing her beyond their dwelling. When they died in the plague that swept through the outer colonies, Taris had been sent to live with her uncle at Meridius Prime. Her uncle ran a small medicinal shop in the lower levels of the spaceport, grudgingly providing her shelter but little else. "Find your own path," he had told her on the day of her arrival. "I cannot watch over a blind Elysian. You are of no use to me in the shop." Taris steadied herself against the column, extending her sensory organ, a delicate antenna-like appendage that sprouted from her forehead. While most Elysians used this organ to enhance their already powerful vision, hers could only detect the vaguest outlines of large objects, like trying to navigate through dense fog. It was barely enough to prevent her from walking into walls, most of the time. "I'm sorry," she murmured, though the Varikians had already moved on, their chittering laughter fading into the general hubbub of the spaceport. She straightened her simple gray tunic and tried to orient herself. The food dispensary should be 2 more sections ahead. Her stomach ached with hunger, but the small allowance her uncle provided barely covered the cost of the cheapest synthetic protein cubes. Today was distribution day for the spaceport's resource allocation program, her one chance this cycle to get enough sustenance to last the week. Taris took a deep breath and pushed forward, her hand sliding along the wall for guidance. The spaceport's artificial gravity felt slightly heavier today, or perhaps it was just her weariness. She had spent the previous night's cycle studying human medical texts by audio input. Humans were one of the few species that regularly accommodated sensory differences, and their medical databases included materials for the visually impaired. Humans fascinated her. Though physically unimpressive compared to many galactic species, they had spread throughout known space with remarkable speed, adapting to environments that would kill most other life forms. They lacked the natural advantages of other species. No enhanced strength, no telepathy, no bioluminescence or natural armor. Yet somehow they thrived everywhere they went. As she made her way toward the food dispensary, the ambient noise of the spaceport suddenly shifted. The normal cacophony of thousands of beings going about their business became punctuated with shouts of alarm and the heavy footfalls of running feet. Taris pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself smaller as the commotion grew closer. "Stand aside. Medical emergency." The voice was deep and authoritative, distinctly human. It was followed by the high-pitched wail of emergency signals. The rushing bodies created air currents that buffeted Taris. She felt disoriented, unable to track what was happening. A sudden impact knocked her sideways, and she fell to the polished floor with a painful thud. The small bag containing her identification chip and allowance card skittered away across the smooth surface. "My ID," she cried out, panic rising in her throat. Without it, she would have no way to collect her food allotment, no way to access her quarters. Her hands scrabbled desperately against the floor, searching. The thundering footsteps and voices continued to flow around her. No one stopped to help. To them, she was just another obstacle, a blind elision of no consequence. Taris felt tears welling in her useless eyes. She had experienced cruelty before, but indifference was sometimes worse. Looking for this, a voice cut through her despair, calm, kind, and distinctly human. Taris raised her head. Through her limited sensory perception, she could make out a tall figure crouching beside her, holding something small in an outstretched hand. "Yes, my ID pouch," she said, reaching toward the blurry shape. "Here you go." The human placed the pouch gently in her palm. "Are you hurt? That was quite a collision." "I'm fine," Tari said automatically, though her shoulder throbbed where she had hit the floor. "Thank you for stopping. No one else would have." "Well, that's their loss," the human replied. "I'm Ethan. Ethan Cole, Medical Research Division." Taris felt a surge of interest. "Medical research? I've been studying human medical texts. Your species' approach to healing is fascinating, so different from ours." "And you are?" Ethan prompted gently. "Oh, I'm Taris. I'm Elysian, though." She hesitated. "Not a very useful one." "Why would you say that?" There was genuine curiosity in his voice. Taris gestured vaguely toward her clouded eyes. "I was born without proper vision. For my species, that's like a bird without wings." The human made a thoughtful sound. "May I?" he asked, and she sensed his hand hovering near her face. Taris nodded and felt warm fingers gently touch her face, tilting it slightly toward what she presumed was better lighting. "Fascinating," Ethan murmured. "I've read about Elysian physiology, but I've never had the chance to meet one of your people up close." He helped her to her feet. "Where were you headed before the emergency response team nearly ran you over?" "The food dispensary," Taris explained. "It's allocation day." "Well, the dispensary will be crowded now with all this commotion. Would you allow me to escort you there?" Ethan offered. "And maybe you could tell me more about how Elysians perceive the world. I'm particularly interested in your species' healing abilities." For the first time that day, Taris smiled. "I would like that very much." As they walked, Taris found herself explaining Elysian biology in more detail than she ever had before. Ethan asked intelligent questions that demonstrated he had done his research, but was hungry to learn more. He guided her expertly through the crowded corridors, describing their surroundings in a way that created vivid pictures in her mind. "So Elysians don't just see light. You see the life energy in other beings?" Ethan asked as they joined the queue at the dispensary. "Yes, though I only know this from what I've been told," Taris explained. "Our vision allows us to perceive imbalances in others, physical injuries, diseases, even emotional distress. That's how we know what needs healing." She paused, feeling the familiar pang of inadequacy. "At least, that's how it works for normal Elysians." "And no medical intervention has worked for your condition?" Taris shook her head. "My parents tried everything before they died. The Elysian healers said my neural pathways never developed properly to process visual information. They can repair damage, but they can't create something that never existed." When they reached the front of the line, Ethan insisted on using his own allocation credits to get Taris a meal of actual synthesized fruits and vegetables instead of the protein cubes. "You really don't have to," she protested. "Consider it payment for the education you're giving me," he replied. "Besides, research shows varied nutrition improves cognitive function across almost all known species." They found a quiet corner of the dining area, and for the next hour, Taris experienced something she had almost forgotten: the simple pleasure of conversation with someone who treated her as an equal, not as a burden or an object of pity. Ethan described his work at the medical research facility, where he specialized in cross-species neural interfaces. "The real breakthrough came when we stopped trying to make universal solutions," he explained, his voice animated with passion. Each species has its own unique neural architecture, so we had to develop customized interfaces. That makes sense, Taris agreed. Elysians have always said that healing must be personalized. No two beings are exactly alike. As their conversation continued, Taris realized Ethan had been gradually asking more detailed questions about her specific condition, the exact nature of her neural development, what treatments had been attempted, how her sensory organ functioned. "I hope I'm not being too forward," he said, seeming to sense her awareness of his pattern of questioning. "It's just that your condition has striking similarities to cases I've worked on." Taris felt a flutter of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. "Do you think, could your research help someone like me?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "I don't want to make promises I can't keep," he finally said. "But I would like to run some scans, if you're willing. My lab has equipment that might give us a better understanding of your specific neural pathways." "I would like that," Taris said softly. "Great. How about tomorrow morning? I can meet you here and take you to the research facility." He paused. "Will your uncle mind?" Taris felt a bitter laugh escape her. "He barely notices whether I come or go, as long as I don't interfere with his business." She sensed Ethan's discomfort at her answer, but he didn't press further. Instead, he arranged a time to meet her the next day and made sure she could find her way back to her quarters. As they parted, Taris felt lighter than she had in years. Even if nothing came of the tests, the simple act of being treated with respect had kindled a warmth inside her. The next morning, true to his word, Ethan was waiting at their arranged meeting spot. He guided her through sections of the spaceport she had never visited before, describing the shifting architecture and the various species they passed. The medical research facility was located in the upper levels of the spaceport, an area reserved for the most prestigious institutions and diplomatic quarters. "This is where you work?" Taris asked, awed by the hushed atmosphere and the subtle scent of sterilization fields. "One of our branches," Ethan confirmed. "The Human Medical Initiative maintains facilities on 12 major spaceports and colony worlds. This one specializes in neurological research." The examination room was cool and quiet. Ethan introduced her to two colleagues, a human woman named Dr. Lauren Bennett and a Tavari neural specialist named Zeno, whose species was renowned for their mastery of brain science. "We'll be using non-invasive scanning techniques," Dr. Bennett explained kindly. "You won't feel anything beyond a slight warming sensation." For the next several hours, Taris lay still as various machines hummed around her. The specialists occasionally murmured to each other in technical terms that she couldn't fully understand. When they finally finished, she sensed an excited tension in the room. "What did you find?" she asked, sitting up on the examination table. Ethan sat beside her. "It's as I suspected. Your neural architecture is fully formed, Taris. The pathways are all there. They're just not receiving the right signals from your sensory organ." "I don't understand," Taris said, confusion clouding her mind. The Elysian healers said. "They were working with Elysian medical technology," Dr. Bennett interjected. "Our approach is different. We don't just heal. We interface, we bridge, we adapt." "Essentially," Zeno added, his melodious Tavari voice flowing like water. "You have the receiver, but not the transmitter. We might be able to provide the transmitter." Hope swelled in Taris's chest, so powerful it was almost painful. "You can make me see?" "We believe so," Ethan said cautiously. "We've been developing a neural interface that could translate visual information from an external source directly to your brain in a way it can process." "An external source?" Taris repeated, not fully comprehending. There was a moment of silence before Ethan explained further. "We would need a donor, someone willing to share visual input from their own eyes, filtered through the interface." "Share their vision? Is that possible?" Taris's voice trembled. "The technology exists," Dr. Bennett confirmed. "We've used similar interfaces for paralyzed patients, allowing them to control prosthetics through a neural link with a donor. But this would be more complex, a continuous share of sensory input." "And who would donate such a thing?" Taris asked, unable to imagine anyone making such a sacrifice. Ethan's voice was steady. I would. The words hung in the air between them. Taris felt her breath catch. But why would you do that for me? We barely know each other. It wouldn't be a complete sacrifice, he explained. The interface diverts a copy of visual input, not the original. I would still see normally, and so would you, through my eyes. There are risks, Zeno cautioned. This has never been attempted between different species. The neural load could be significant, and there would be considerations about privacy and boundaries. What Zeno means, Ethan translated, is that we would be connected. You would see what I see. It would require trust on both sides. Taris's mind raced with questions and possibilities. How long would it last? Would it be permanent? Initially, we would establish a temporary connection, Dr. Bennett explained. If successful, and if both parties agree, a more permanent solution could be considered. I need time to think, Taris said, feeling overwhelmed. Of course, Ethan agreed immediately. This is not a decision to make lightly. Take all the time you need. As they left the medical facility, Ethan suggested they visit the spaceport's botanical garden, a place Taris had heard about but never visited, assuming it would hold little interest for someone who couldn't see the plants. The garden engages all senses, Ethan explained as they entered a space that immediately felt different from the rest of the spaceport. The air was moister, filled with a complex tapestry of scents. Humans designed it to be accessible to multiple species with different sensory capabilities. He guided her through sections featuring plants from dozens of worlds, describing their colors and shapes while encouraging her to touch their varied textures and smell their distinctive fragrances. For an hour, Taris forgot about her blindness, lost in the sensory richness of the garden. As they sat on a bench near a bubbling water feature, Taris finally asked the question that had been troubling her. Why would you offer this to me? There must be others more deserving. Ethan was quiet for a moment. When I was 12, I contracted a virus on one of the colony worlds. It affected my optic nerves. For 8 months, I was completely blind. Taris turned toward him in surprise. Advanced regenerative treatment eventually restored my sight, he continued, but those 8 months changed me. I know what it's like to live in darkness, to be treated differently because you can't see. And I remember the day I could see again. It was like being reborn. He took a breath. That experience led me to this field. I want to help others experience that moment. And when I met you, when I learned about your condition, I realized we might have the perfect test case for technology we've been developing for years. So, I would be an experiment? Taris tried to keep the hurt from her voice. No, Ethan said firmly. You would be the first, yes. But this isn't about experimentation. It's about offering a gift that I uniquely can give. I wouldn't have offered if I didn't believe it could work, or if I wasn't prepared for the commitment it represents. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the water. If it works, Taris finally said, I could see my world for the first time. I could work as a healer, as I was meant to. Yes, Ethan agreed. And more importantly, you could live without barriers. And if it fails? Then we try something else, he said simply. I don't give up easily. That night, Taris barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities. By morning, she had made her decision. She would accept Ethan's offer. The chance to see, to truly see, was worth any risk. When she told Ethan her decision, he responded with cautious optimism. We'll start with a temporary connection, just a few hours. If all goes well, we can discuss more permanent options. The preparation for the procedure took 3 days. During that time, Taris learned more about Ethan Cole. He had come to Meridius Prime 2 years ago after establishing successful neural interface clinics on Earth and Mars. He was respected in his field, known for his willingness to attempt treatments others deemed too risky or experimental. Some call me reckless, he admitted as they shared another meal together. But I believe medical advancement requires bold steps. The Elysian healers say that healing is a dance between caution and courage, Taris offered. Too much of either leads to failure. Ethan laughed, a warm sound that Taris had come to enjoy. I like that. I'll remember it next time my supervisors question my methods. On the morning of the procedure, Taris felt a mixture of terror and excitement unlike anything she had experienced before. The medical team had explained everything in detail, how they would attach neural sensors to both her and Ethan, how the interface would gradually activate to prevent sensory shock, how they would monitor both of their brain activities throughout the process. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked as they lay on adjacent medical platforms. "As ready as I'll ever be," Taris replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Remember," Dr. Bennett said, "we'll start with minimal input, just basic light and shadow. If that goes well, we'll gradually increase the complexity of the visual information being shared." Taris felt the cool touch of the neural interface being attached to the base of her sensory organ. A mild sedative flowed through her system, calming her racing heart without dulling her awareness. "Beginning neural synchronization," Zeno announced. Ethan, maintained visual focus on the calibration screen. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, Taris became aware of something. A faint difference in her perception. Not quite vision as she had imagined it, but a new type of awareness, like a phantom limb she never knew she had. "I feel something," she whispered. "Hey, presence." "That's good," Dr. Bennett encouraged. "The interface is establishing initial connections." "Ethan, how are you feeling?" "Fine," came his reply. "A slight pressure at the base of my skull, but no discomfort." The strange awareness grew stronger. Taris gasped as she realized what she was experiencing: darkness and light. Not the perpetual darkness she had known all her life, but actual darkness with edges, with definition. And within that darkness, a small point of light. "I can see the light," she breathed, tears forming in her eyes. "The one on the calibration screen." The medical team exchanged excited glances. "Increasing visual transfer to 20%, Zeno announced. The change was immediate and overwhelming. The point of light expanded, became a square. Then more squares, arranged in patterns. Colors began to bleed into her consciousness. Colors she had no names for, no references to understand, yet somehow she knew them instinctively. "Too much," Taris gasped, overwhelmed by the flood of new sensations. "Reducing to 15%, Zeno said quickly. The visual assault receded to a manageable level. "Better," Taris managed. "It's incredible." Over the next hour, the team gradually increased the visual input, allowing Taris time to adjust to each new level. She learned to interpret depth, to distinguish between different objects, to recognize faces, including, for the first time, her own, reflected in a mirror held up by Dr. Bennett. "Is that me?" she whispered, staring at the slender blue figure with delicate features and cloudy eyes that nonetheless now held a spark of life. The sensory organ protruding from her forehead pulsed with a gentle bioluminescence she had never known it possessed. "That's you," Ethan confirmed, his voice filled with emotion. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Tears streamed down Taris's face. "I never knew," she said softly. "I never knew what anything looked like. The colors, the shapes, the light. It's too much. Too beautiful." "I think that's enough for today," Dr. Bennett decided. "Both your neural patterns show signs of fatigue." "Just one more minute," Taris pleaded. "I want to see him, Ethan. I want to see the person who gave me this gift." The medical team exchanged glances before nodding. Zeno adjusted something on the control panel. "Look to your right, Ethan." Taris felt the visual input shift, and suddenly she was looking at a human male with kind brown eyes, short dark hair, and a face lined with both concern and wonder. He smiled at her, and she felt the impact of that expression in a way she never could have before. "Hello, Taris," Ethan said. "Hello," she replied, memorizing every detail of his face, knowing that soon the darkness would return. "Thank you. Thank you for showing me the light." As the interface was deactivated, Taris felt the world of vision slipping away. She wanted to grab it, to hold on to it, but it faded inexorably back into the familiar darkness. She wept then, not from joy but from loss. "It's all right." Ethan's voice came to her, and she felt his hand take hers. "This is just the beginning. If all the readings check out, we can try again tomorrow for longer." Over the next week, Taris and Ethan underwent daily connection sessions, each one lasting longer than the last. The medical team monitored their neural patterns carefully, looking for any signs of strain or rejection. To everyone's relief, the interface functioned perfectly. For Taris, each session was a revelation. She learned to interpret the visual world with increasing speed and accuracy. By the fourth day, she could navigate the examination room without assistance while connected to Ethan's vision. By the sixth day, they ventured out into the main areas of the medical facility, Taris experiencing for the first time what it was like to move confidently through space, seeing obstacles before encountering them. But it was on the seventh day that everything changed. They were walking through the spaceport's main concourse, the same place where they had first met, when they encountered a group of Varikian merchants. Taris recognized them immediately as the ones who had mocked her. One of the Varikians noticed her walking confidently alongside Ethan and clicked its mandibles in surprise. "The blind one sees now," it asked in the common tongue. Taris felt a surge of confidence. "Yes," she said simply. "I see." The Varikians exchanged glances, their compound eyes reflecting the harsh lighting of the concourse. The leader stepped forward. "How is this possible? Illusions cannot be cured of true blindness." It was Ethan who answered. "Not cured. Connected. We share vision now." The concept seemed to disturb the Varikians. They chittered among themselves in their native language before the leader addressed Taris again. "This is unnatural. To see through another's eyes? It violates the natural order." Taris felt a flash of anger. And is it natural to mock those who are different? Is it the natural order to laugh at suffering? The Varikian had the grace to lower its gaze. "We meant no true harm. It is our way to appreciate irony. A blind member of a species known for its extraordinary vision. We found this paradoxical." "Well, find your paradoxes elsewhere," Ethan said firmly. Taris is under the protection of the Human Medical Division now. As they walked away, Taris felt a strange mixture of vindication and discomfort. "Is it truly unnatural, what we're doing?" she asked quietly. Ethan considered the question seriously. Technology often seems unnatural at first. When humans first replaced failing hearts with mechanical ones, many called it an abomination. Now it's routine. The definition of natural evolves as we do. That evening, as they sat in Ethan's quarters reviewing the day's neural readings, Taris broached the subject that had been growing in her mind. "The temporary connection is working better than anyone expected," she began carefully. "Yes," Ethan agreed, looking up from the data display. "Your brain has adapted to the interface remarkably quickly. Zeno says it's because your neural pathways were always meant for vision. They just needed the right input. So a permanent connection might work even better," Taris suggested, her heart racing. "Once my brain fully adapts, the visual processing would become second nature." Ethan set down the data pad. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "Yes," Taris said firmly. "I want the permanent connection. I want to see. Always, not just during our sessions." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as indicating he was thinking deeply. "A permanent connection would mean a permanent link between us, Taris. I would always be aware of you at some level, and you of me. Our privacy would be compromised." "I understand that," she said. "But is it so different from what we're doing now? Already I've seen through your eyes as you eat, as you work, as you interact with others. You've allowed me into your world more completely than anyone ever has." "The permanent interface would be more sophisticated," Ethan explained. "It would allow you to control when you access my visual feed and when you don't. You could essentially turn off the connection when privacy is needed. But the link would always be there, dormant but present." Taris considered this. "And you would be willing to accept such a connection? For how long?" Ethan met her gaze directly, though she could only see him when they were linked. "For as long as needed. For life, if necessary." The weight of his offer stunned her. "Why would you make such a sacrifice for me? Is it a sacrifice to share something that costs me nothing to give?" Ethan asked softly. "My vision remains unaffected. The neural load is minimal. And to know that someone else experiences the world through my eyes." He smiled. It's actually quite extraordinary. 2 days later, they presented their request for a permanent interface to the Medical Review Board. Dr. Bennett and Zeno provided extensive data showing the success of the temporary connection and projections for the permanent version. The board members, representing various species and medical traditions, listened attentively but with obvious concern. "What you propose has never been done," said the Trillion board member, her crystalline form shimmering with doubt. "A permanent neural link between different species for sensory sharing? The implications are unsettling." "With respect," Dr. Bennett countered, "many medical advances begin as unsettling concepts. The data clearly shows the connection is stable and beneficial." "And what of the ethical considerations?" asked the human representative. "Dr. Cole, you would be permanently sharing your visual perceptions with another being. Have you considered how this might affect your personal relationships, your professional duties?" "I have," Ethan replied calmly. "The interface allows for privacy modes that would temporarily suspend the connection when necessary. But more importantly, I enter this arrangement willingly, with full understanding of what it entails." The questioning continued for hours. Tari spoke passionately about what the temporary connection had already meant to her, how it had transformed her from an object of pity to a person capable of independence. She described her hope of finally becoming a healer, fulfilling her species' natural role. In the end, the board approved the procedure on a provisional basis. The permanent interface would be installed, but with quarterly reviews for the first 2 years to ensure both participants continued to benefit from the arrangement. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. As the day approached, Taris found herself spending more and more time with Ethan, not just during their connection sessions, but throughout the day. They talked for hours, sharing stories from their vastly different lives, finding surprising commonalities in their perspectives. The night before the surgery, they sat together in the botanical garden where they had first discussed the possibility of the interface. "Are you nervous?" Ethan asked. "A little," Taris admitted, "but more excited than afraid. Tomorrow I begin a new life, one I never thought possible." "There's something I haven't told you," Ethan said after a moment, "about why I chose this specific research path." Taris turned toward him curiously. "The virus that took my sight when I was 12, it's not entirely gone," he explained. "It lies dormant in my system. The doctors say there's a 15% chance it could reactivate someday, and if it does, the damage might not be reparable a second time." Taris felt a chill. "You might lose your sight again?" "It's unlikely, but possible," he acknowledged. "I've lived with that knowledge for years. It's partly why this project means so much to me. If the worst happens, I wanted to know there might be a way to still experience the visual world, even if through someone else's eyes. So this connection, it might someday benefit you as much as me," Taris realized. Ethan nodded. "The technology works both ways. The same interface that allows you to see through my eyes could allow me to see through yours if your visual system were functional. But it's not," Taris said sadly. "Not yet," Ethan corrected. "But Zeno believes that with continued neural stimulation through our connection, your own visual pathways might eventually activate. It's a long shot, but possible." Taris sat with this new information, letting it settle in her mind. "So we might truly share vision someday, each seeing through the other's eyes." "Maybe," Ethan said. "But that's not why I'm doing this. I want you to know that." "I know," Taris assured him. "Just as I'm not doing this in the hope of someday helping you. We each have our reasons, but I believe they come from the same place, a desire to connect, to share, to help." The next morning, as they were being prepared for the surgery, Taris reached out and took Ethan's hand. Through their temporary connection, she could see their hands clasped together, her slender blue fingers intertwined with his broader human ones. "Thank you," she said simply, "for giving me the stars." Ethan smiled. "And thank you for helping me see the world with new eyes." As the anesthesia took effect and Taris drifted into unconsciousness, her last thought was of the incredible journey she was about to begin, a journey that would bind her life to a human's in a way no one had ever experienced before. A journey from darkness into light, from isolation into connection. A journey toward a future bright with possibility and shared vision. The recovery room was quiet except for the soft hum of medical equipment. Taris opened her eyes to darkness, the familiar void she had known all her life. For a moment, panic seized her. Had the procedure failed? Was she condemned to blindness forever? Then she felt it, a subtle presence at the edge of her consciousness, like a door waiting to be opened. Following her instincts, she reached toward that presence with her mind. The darkness wavered, then parted like a curtain, revealing a world of light and color. She was seeing through Ethan's eyes. He was looking at her, she realized with a start. She saw herself as he saw her, lying on the recovery bed, her blue skin contrasting against the white medical sheets, her cloudy eyes open but unfocused, the sensory organ on her forehead pulsing with a gentle blue light. It worked, she whispered, her voice rough from the breathing tube that had been removed after surgery. Ethan smiled, and Taris experienced the odd sensation of seeing his smile while simultaneously seeing herself through his eyes. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Strange," she admitted. "Wonderful, but strange. I see myself through your eyes, but I also feel myself in my body. It's like being in two places at once." Dr. Bennett moved into Ethan's field of vision, checking the readings on a medical tablet. "The neural pathways are stable," she reported. "Both of your brain patterns show harmonious integration with the interface." "What about the control functions?" Ethan asked. "Can Taris modulate the connection?" "Let's test it," Dr. Bennett suggested. She turned to Taris. "Try to locate the mental switch we discussed during preparation. It should feel like a barrier or threshold in your mind." Taris concentrated, exploring the new landscape of her consciousness. After a moment, she found it, a point of resistance that seemed to separate her mind from Ethan's visual cortex. Cautiously, she pushed against it with her thoughts. The visual input immediately dimmed, becoming translucent, like looking through frosted glass. "I think I found it," she said. "Everything's faded now, less distinct." "Good," Dr. Bennett nodded. "That's the privacy filter. Now try to disengage completely." Taris pushed harder against the mental barrier. The visual feed flickered, then vanished completely, returning her to darkness. The absence felt jarring after the brief reconnection with sight. "It's gone," she reported, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. "Now try to re-establish the connection," Dr. Bennett instructed. Taris reached for that presence in her mind again, pulling back the barrier she had just erected. Light flooded in once more, and she was seeing through Ethan's eyes again. He had turned toward a window, showing her the vast expanse of space beyond the spaceport. Countless stars glittering against the velvet blackness, a nearby nebula casting a purple-green glow across a section of the view. "The stars," Taris breathed. "They're even more beautiful than I imagined." Over the next 3 days, Taris remained in the medical facility for observation. She spent hours practicing control of the interface, learning to adjust the strength of the connection, to disengage when Ethan needed privacy, and to re-engage when she wanted to see. The permanent interface proved more sophisticated than the temporary one, allowing her to maintain a low-level awareness of Ethan's visual feed without being overwhelmed by it. On the 4th day, she was released from medical care. Ethan accompanied her back to her uncle's quarters in the lower levels of the spaceport. "Are you sure you want to return here?" he asked as they approached the small, dingy compartment. Through his eyes, Taris could see the stark contrast between these cramped quarters and the clean, spacious medical facility they had left behind. "I need to speak with my uncle," Taris explained. "To tell him what's happened." Her uncle was restocking shelves in his medicinal shop when they entered. He barely glanced up at their arrival. "So you've returned," he said flatly. "I heard rumors you were involved in some human medical experiment." Through Ethan's eyes, Taris studied her uncle properly for the first time. An older Elysian with faded blue skin and tired eyes, his sensory organ drooping slightly with age. She was struck by how small and bitter he seemed, nothing like the intimidating presence she had imagined. "It wasn't an experiment, Uncle," Taris said, standing straighter than she ever had in his presence. "It was a gift. I can see now. That got his attention. He turned fully toward them, his eyes narrowing. Illusions cannot cure true blindness. This is known. I wasn't cured, Taris explained. I was connected. I see through Ethan's eyes now. She gestured to the human beside her. Her uncle's face twisted with disgust. You've allowed your mind to be linked with a human? This is abomination. Illusions do not mingle their essence with other species. Taris felt a flash of anger. Illusions are supposed to be healers, yet none of you could help me. You called me defective, useless. Now I can see, and you call it abomination? It is unnatural, her uncle insisted. What will happen when this human tires of sharing his vision? When he leaves the spaceport or dies? You will be blind again, and worse, dependent on an alien. I'm not going anywhere, Ethan said calmly. And the connection we share benefits us both. Your niece is extraordinarily gifted, even without traditional illusion sight. She's already been offered a position in our research division. This was news to Taris, who turned to Ethan in surprise. Through his eyes, she saw her own expression of astonishment, which made for a disconcerting feedback loop of perception. Her uncle snorted. A human medical facility is no place for an illusion. That's not your decision to make, Taris replied firmly. I came to inform you of my new circumstances and to collect my belongings. I'll be moving to quarters near the medical facility. As they gathered her few possessions, Taris felt a mixture of emotions. Relief at leaving her uncle's oppressive presence, anxiety about her new future, and a lingering sadness that her own people had rejected her transformation so thoroughly. Don't let his reaction trouble you, Ethan said as they left the lower levels. Change frightens many people, especially when it challenges their established beliefs. But what if he's right? Taris asked quietly. What if our connection is somehow wrong? Unnatural? Ethan considered this seriously. Natural and unnatural are just labels we assign based on our limited understanding. Was it natural for humans to first leave Earth and travel among the stars? Many said no. Now it defines us. As they rode the lift toward the upper levels, Ethan continued. Besides, the Elysian tradition celebrates connection and healing. We've simply found a new form of both. In time, others may come to see it that way too. Taris's new quarters were modest but comfortable, located just one level below the medical research facility. As Ethan showed her around, she marveled at being able to navigate without assistance, to see the layout of rooms and the placement of furniture without bumping into them. The research division would like you to start next week, Ethan explained, if you feel ready. Your unique perspective could be invaluable to our work on neural interfaces for other species. I would be researching, not just a subject of research. Taris clarified. Exactly. Your experience bridges illusion and human medical approaches in ways no one else can. Plus, you'll have access to the training resources to develop your own healing skills. That night, after Ethan had returned to his own quarters, Taris experienced her first true solitude with sight. She had practiced disconnecting from Ethan's visual feed during their training, but now she alternated between darkness and vision, exploring the sensation of control it gave her. When she engaged the connection, she saw what Ethan saw. He was reading research papers on his data pad, occasionally making notes. It felt strangely intimate, like looking over someone's shoulder, yet also comfortingly mundane. This would be their life now, separate but connected, two beings sharing a single sense yet maintaining their individuality. Before sleep, she sent a soft pulse through the connection, a technique they had developed to signal each other without words. A moment later, she felt an answering pulse, and then Ethan turned his gaze toward the same stellar view she had first seen from the recovery room. He was showing her the stars as a goodnight gesture. Taris smiled in the darkness of her room, watching the cosmic dance of light until she drifted off to sleep. The following weeks brought rapid changes as Taris adjusted to her new life. Her position at the research facility provided structure and purpose. She worked alongside Ethan, Dr. Bennett, and Zeno, using her unique perspective to help refine neural interfaces for other species with sensory impairments. The key insight is that we shouldn't try to replicate exactly how a species naturally perceives, Taris explained during a research conference. Rather, we should create bridges between different perceptual worlds. Her work quickly gained attention throughout the medical community of Meridius Prime. Word spread of the elision who saw through human eyes, and soon patients from various species were being referred to their division for consultation. One case particularly touched Taris, a young Varikian whose compound eyes had been damaged in an industrial accident. The Varikian healing houses had declared the damage irreparable, leaving the once proud worker dependent on caretakers. I understand what it means to be considered defective by your own kind, Taris told the Varikian as she examined the neural scans. But defective is just a word, not a destiny. Working with Zeno, Taris helped develop a modified interface that connected the Varikian's visual cortex to specialized cameras that mimicked compound eye vision. The procedure was successful, and when the Varikian regained a form of sight, Taris felt a sense of completion. She had become the healer she was always meant to be, just through a different path than her people traditionally followed. As her professional life flourished, her personal connection with Ethan deepened as well. Sharing vision created an unprecedented bond between them. They developed their own subtle language of visual cues and shared observations that no one else could understand. When they worked together in the lab, they often completed each other's sentences, having literally seen the problem from the same perspective. But the connection also created challenges. 6 months after the procedure, Ethan was required to travel to another spaceport for a medical conference. It would be their first significant separation since establishing the permanent link. The connection should remain stable across this distance, Zeno assured them. Our tests indicate the quantum entanglement protocols in the interface can maintain coherence across several light years. Still, both Taris and Ethan felt anxious about the separation. What if the connection failed while they were apart? What if the neural load became too great across such distances? The morning of Ethan's departure, Taris accompanied him to the shuttle bay. Through his eyes, she watched herself bid him farewell, a strange, recursive experience she had never quite gotten used to. I'll only be gone for 5 days, Ethan reassured her, squeezing her hand. And we'll still be connected the whole time. I know, Taris said. It just feels strange to know you'll be seeing things I've never experienced. Ethan smiled. Think of it as exploration by proxy. You'll see a whole new spaceport through my eyes. As his shuttle departed, Taris maintained the connection, watching through Ethan's eyes as Meridius Prime dwindled to a glittering structure against the blackness of space. She felt a moment of vertigo at the vastness of it all, then settled into the experience, marveling at her first view of space travel. The first 2 days of Ethan's absence passed without incident. The connection remained stable, though Taris noticed a slight delay in the visual feed, a fraction of a second that created a subtle dissonance in her perception. She spent her days at the research facility, continuing their work while experiencing the conference through Ethan's periodic updates. On the 3rd day, everything changed. Taris was analyzing neural mapping data when a blinding pain shot through her head. The visual feed from Ethan distorted violently, colors smearing, shapes warping, then nothing but static and flashes of light. She cried out, clutching her sensory organ, which burned as if on fire. Zeno rushed to her side. What's happening? The connection, something's wrong, Taris gasped. Through fragmenting bursts of vision, she caught glimpses of a conference room, people rushing about, Ethan's hands gripping a podium as he collapsed. Then the connection went dark. For the first time since the procedure, Taris felt truly blind again. Not the controlled darkness of deliberately disconnecting, but a severed, jagged absence. She reached desperately with her mind for that presence she had grown so accustomed to, but found nothing, just an echoing void where Ethan's visual cortex should be. Ethan, she whispered. I can't see him. I can't feel him. Medical alarms blared as her own neural patterns destabilized. The last thing Taris heard before losing consciousness was Zeno calling for an emergency medical team. She woke in a hospital bed, the familiar sensations of medical monitors attached to her sensory organ. The darkness remained absolute. No hint of the door to Ethan's vision that had become so familiar. "Taris? Can you hear me?" Dr. Bennett's voice came from beside her. "Yes," Taris replied, her throat dry. "What happened? Where's Ethan?" There was a pause that stretched too long. "Ethan suffered an episode during his presentation," Dr. Bennett finally explained. "The dormant virus we told you about. It reactivated suddenly and attacked his optic nerves. The neural shock transferred through your connection, which is why you felt pain." Fear gripped Taris's heart. "Is he dead?" "No," Dr. Bennett said quickly. "But he's in critical condition. They're stabilizing him now and preparing to transport him back to Meridius Prime." "His vision." She hesitated. "The damage appears severe. The virus moved more aggressively than before." "He's blind," Taris stated, understanding immediately. "And so am I again." "The connection is temporarily suspended," Dr. Bennett corrected. "Once Ethan is back here and stabilized, we can assess whether re-establishing the link is possible. But yes, for now, you've both lost vision." The irony wasn't lost on Taris. The very circumstance Ethan had feared, the reactivation of the virus that once took his sight, had come to pass. And now they both lived in darkness. Over the next 24 hours, Taris insisted on staying in the medical facility, waiting for news of Ethan's return. Without vision, she felt as if she had regressed to her former self, uncertain, dependent, lost. But something was different this time. She had memories of sight now, reference points, context, understanding of the visual world that she had lacked before. Using those memories, she constructed a mental map of the medical facility and began to navigate it with more confidence than she had ever shown in her blind state. When nurses offered to guide her, she politely declined, preferring to find her own way. "Your neural patterns have changed," Zeno observed after conducting a scan. "Even without the active connection to Ethan, your brain retains the structures it developed while processing visual information." "Is that significant?" Taris asked. "Potentially," Zeno replied. "It suggests your brain adapted more fundamentally than we anticipated. The pathways for visual processing exist now, independent of the external source." Before Taris could fully process this information, an alert sounded throughout the facility. Ethan's medical transport had arrived. She made her way to the emergency bay, guided by sound and memory. The commotion of a critical patient arrival surrounded her, voices calling medical terms, the whir of a hover gurney, the hiss of pressure doors. "Ethan," she called out, trying to locate him in the chaos. "Taris." His voice was weak but unmistakable. "I'm here." She followed the sound, reaching out until her hands found the edge of the hover gurney. His fingers grasped hers, squeezing weakly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "The virus, it happened so suddenly." "Don't apologize," Taris said firmly. "We'll face this together. Like you helped me, I'll help you now." The medical team whisked Ethan away for treatment, leaving Taris in the waiting area. Hours passed as she sat motionless, remembering all the wonders she had seen through Ethan's eyes. The stars, the botanical garden, the faces of colleagues who had become friends, and most importantly, Ethan himself. Would she ever see again? Would he? The questions circled in her mind like trapped birds. When Dr. Bennett finally came to update her, the news was mixed. "The virus has been neutralized," she explained, "but the damage to Ethan's optic nerves is extensive. Our initial assessment suggests his vision loss may be permanent this time." Taris absorbed this news with a strange calm. "And the neural interface? Can it be reactivated?" "That's the complex part," Dr. Bennett said. "The interface itself is intact, but without Ethan's visual cortex receiving input from his eyes, there's nothing for it to transmit to you. You'd be connected to his blindness, essentially." "I want to see him," Taris requested. Dr. Bennett led her to Ethan's room. Without sight, Taris relied on her other senses. The sound of his breathing, the scent of antiseptic, the feel of his hand as she found it again. She sat beside his bed in shared darkness. "This wasn't how it was supposed to go," Ethan said softly. "I was supposed to give you vision forever." You changed my life, Taris told him. You showed me what it means to truly see, not just with eyes, but with understanding. Whatever happens now, I will never regret our connection. They sat together in silence for a while, two beings united by shared loss. Then Taris felt something stir within her mind, not the familiar door to Ethan's vision, but something deeper, more primal. A tingling sensation spread across her sensory organ, which began to pulse rhythmically. Taris, Ethan's voice held concern. Your sensory organ is glowing brightly. Dr. Bennett just told me. Taris barely heard him. She was focused inward, on the strange awakening she felt in her neural pathways. The tingling intensified, became a rush of sensation unlike anything she had experienced before. Suddenly, the darkness before her began to lift, replaced by a faint luminous fog. I think I see something, she gasped. The fog coalesced into vague shapes. The outline of Ethan on the bed, the walls of the room, the medical equipment surrounding them. Not through Ethan's eyes, but through her own. Zeno, Dr. Bennett called out, her voice excited. Get in here now. Taris's visual cortex is activating. The Tavari neural specialist rushed in, medical scanners already running. Extraordinary, he breathed. Her natural visual pathways are coming online. The extended stimulation from the neural interface appears to have triggered regeneration in dormant neural tissue. I can see, Taris whispered, tears streaming down her face. Not clearly, not like before, but I can see light, shapes, movement. Ethan's hand tightened around hers. Taris, that's incredible. Over the next hours, Taris's natural vision continued to strengthen. Colors began to appear, muted at first, then increasingly vibrant. Details sharpened. By nightfall, she could distinguish faces, read large text, navigate without assistance. It appears the neural interface acted as a form of therapy, Zeno explained to them both. By routing visual information through Taris's brain for months, it stimulated the development of neural networks that were always present but dormant. Her brain essentially learned how to see, and now her natural sensory organ has taken over the function. Will her vision continue to improve? Ethan asked. Most likely, Zeno confirmed. Her neural scans show continued development. She may never achieve the level of visual acuity natural to most elisions, but functional vision? Yes, I believe that's now a certainty. The implications of this discovery were enormous. If neural interfaces could stimulate dormant sensory capabilities in other species, countless beings might be helped. The research division immediately began formulating protocols for new clinical trials. But for Taris, the most significant realization was what this meant for Ethan. She turned to him, seeing his face clearly with her own eyes for the first time. The same kind features she had grown to know through their connection, now perceived through her own unique visual system. Ethan, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. The interface works both ways. You said it yourself. If I can see, understanding dawned on his face. You think I could see through your eyes? The way you saw through mine. We need to try, Taris insisted. Zeno, Dr. Bennett, is it possible? The medical team exchanged glances. The interface is bidirectional by design, Dr. Bennett acknowledged. But we've never tested reverse flow on this scale. The neural load on Ethan's brain would be significant, Zeno cautioned. His visual cortex would need to adapt to processing elision visual input, which includes emotional energies humans typically cannot perceive. I want to try, Ethan said firmly. After all, what do I have to lose? The procedure to reverse the interface took 3 days to prepare. During that time, Taris never left Ethan's side. She described everything she saw with her new vision, painting verbal pictures to keep his spirits up. She noticed that her perception differed from what she had experienced through his eyes. Colors had different qualities, edges seemed softer, and she occasionally caught glimpses of faint auras around living beings that she now recognized as the emotional energies elisions naturally perceived. Your vision is returning more elision capabilities than we expected, Zeno noted with fascination. This suggests your natural genetic blueprint is asserting itself, now that the pathways are active. On the day of the procedure, both Taris and Ethan were prepared for neural synchronization. The interface would be reactivated, but with the flow of information reversed, from Taris's visual cortex to Ethan's. Remember, this is experimental, Dr. Bennett warned them. We'll start at minimal input levels and increase gradually, just as we did originally. Ethan, if you experience any discomfort or disorientation, signal immediately. As the interface activated, Taris felt that familiar presence in her mind again. Not a doorway this time, but a window, a connection flowing outward rather than inward. Ethan gasped. Light, he whispered. I see light. The medical team monitored his neural patterns carefully as they increased the connection strength. Unlike Taris's first experience with vision, Ethan's brain had already processed visual information for most of his life, making the adaptation faster but also more jarring. Everything looks strange, he reported. Colors are more vibrant, almost pulsing. And there are these halos around everyone. Is that how Elysians see? You're perceiving emotional energies, Taris explained, excited. The auras that surround living beings. They reflect feelings, intentions, even health status. Over several hours, Ethan adjusted to seeing through Elysian perception. The team carefully calibrated the interface to filter certain wavelengths that human brains weren't equipped to process, finding a balance that provided clear vision without overwhelming his neural architecture. By evening, Ethan was able to navigate the room using Taris's sight. His movements were hesitant at first, then increasingly confident as he adapted to the new visual reference points. He struggled to find words. It's like seeing for the first time all over again. Everything has depth I never noticed before. That plant in the corner. I can see its life force pulsing through the stem. And all of you. You're surrounded by these beautiful coronas of light that shift with your emotions. Taris watched him with joy and wonder. The human who had given her sight was now experiencing an entirely new form of vision through her eyes. The circle was complete. In the weeks that followed, they refined the connection, learning to modulate it as they had before, but now with Taris as the primary visual source. They discovered that the shared neural pathways allowed them to switch control of the interface. Sometimes Ethan would see through Taris's eyes, other times she would see through his preserved visual cortex, experiencing memories of what he had once seen. This flexibility proved invaluable to their research. With Ethan able to experience Elysian perception directly, and Taris having knowledge of human vision, they developed breakthrough protocols for cross-species neural interfaces. Their work expanded to include other sensory modalities, hearing, touch, even the exotic chemical senses of certain methane-breathing species. 6 months after the reversal procedure, Taris received an unexpected visitor, her uncle. I heard about your work, he said stiffly as he stood in the doorway of her laboratory. Word has reached even the Elysian homeworld. Through her own eyes, Taris studied him, no longer the intimidating figure of her blind days, but an old Elysian clinging to traditional ways. She could see the complex swirl of emotions in his aura, pride wrestling with prejudice, curiosity battling with rigid beliefs. Would you like to see what we're doing here? She offered. To her surprise, he nodded. She showed him the neural interface technology, explained how it had not only given her vision, but had awakened her natural Elysian abilities. She introduced him to patients of various species who had benefited from their work, beings who now perceived the world in ways their biology had never intended, but their spirits had always craved. This isn't an abomination, she told him gently. It's evolution. Connection. The very essence of what Elysians value. Her uncle didn't apologize. That wasn't the Elysian way. But as he was leaving, he paused. Your parents would be proud, he said simply. You have become a healer after all, just not in the way we expected. Those words meant more to Taris than any formal recognition. 1 year after the virus changed both their lives, Taris and Ethan stood together in the Spaceport's botanical garden, watching a ceremony that would have once seemed impossible. The Interstellar Medical Council was officially adopting their neural interface protocols as standard treatment for certain types of sensory impairment. Species from across known space had gathered for the announcement, including a delegation of Elysians, who had finally recognized the value of Taris's unique approach to healing. "Did you ever imagine this?" Ethan asked her, his voice soft. Through their connection, he was seeing the garden both through her Elysian perception and his memories of how it once looked to human eyes, a double vision that created a richer experience than either could have alone. "Never," Taris admitted. "When we first met, all I wanted was to stop bumping into walls, to not be mocked for my blindness." She turned to face him directly. "You gave me so much more than vision, Ethan. You gave me purpose. And you gave me back the stars," he replied. "But more importantly, you showed me how to see beyond the surface of things, to perceive the energy and emotion that connects all living beings." Their journey had transformed not just their own lives, but the understanding of neural science throughout known space. The mockery Taris had once endured had been replaced by respect and admiration. The human who had given her his vision had received an entirely new way of seeing in return. Together, they had transcended the limitations of their separate biologies to create something unprecedented, a shared perception that honored both their differences and their common essence. They had proven that connection could overcome isolation, that adaptation could triumph over limitation, and that the barriers between species were perhaps not as fixed as many believed. As the ceremony concluded and the assembled beings dispersed, Taris and Ethan remained in the garden, watching the artificial sunlight play through the exotic foliage. Through their unique bond, each experienced the beauty before them in ways neither could fully describe to others, a private universe of shared vision. "What's next for us?" Taris asked, though she already knew the answer. Ethan smiled. "We keep exploring. There are still so many worlds to see, so many ways of perceiving reality we haven't even imagined yet." "Together," Taris said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "Together," Ethan confirmed. Two perspectives, one vision. As they walked side by side through the garden they had first visited when their journey began, Taris reflected on how far they had come. Once, she had been the blind alien girl who hit walls, mocked by those who couldn't understand her isolation. Now, she moved confidently through the world, seeing it through eyes that were both Elysian and human, biological and technological, personal and shared. The mockery had faded into distant memory, replaced by a bond that transcended species and sensory limitations. A human had given her his vision, yes, but what they had created together was something far greater than either could have achieved alone. It was a new way of seeing the universe, where connection bridged the gaps between different worlds, different beings, different perceptions. And in that shared vision, they had found not just sight, but insight, the profound understanding that true healing comes not from fixing what is broken, but from creating new pathways to wholeness. As they left the garden, the stars above the spaceport shimmered with promise. Countless worlds waiting to be seen through eyes that now knew how to truly look beyond the surface and perceive the luminous connections binding all life together across the vast expanse of space. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.